Hello everyone. This is number 4. We're still in the creation of the world. We're still in the first chapter of the creation of the world, so to speak. And we're using the Soncino Zohar as our base to speak about the voice as is being taught by me in the Voice of Spiritual Approach to singing, speaking, and communicating the Kabbalah of the voice. First of all, thank you for the notes and the suggestions, and those are always welcome, of course. I'm not here to argue with anybody or to discuss what I teach with those who teach something else. I've always believed that every voice teacher does exactly the best that he possibly can, and nobody's out to really destroy. There is just a point of knowledge and how to interpret that knowledge and what is being taught to you and what is being taught by you. My task in this world is not to argue. My task in this world is to teach what I know how to teach and what I received by divine gift. I said this at the beginning. I'm going to say it again. My book is a challenge. It's a challenge to the world, and it will remain that way. Anybody who has anything to say, by all means, do so. But be concrete. Bring me, show me, and I will show you. Accusations are not very useful, let's say. Not only don't I accept them, but I also think that without fact and without real looking at things and knowing them, they're very childish and silly. Let's begin. We're on page 160. This is an incredibly important conversation. I will read it and then we will talk about it. Rabbi Shimon proceeded. Rabbi Shimon is always the author of the Kabbalah, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, and we're learning directly from the Kabbalah and from my own teaching. Rabbi Shimon proceeded. In the same way, the Torah is situated between two houses, one recondite and on high, and the other more accessible. The one on high is the great voice, referred to in the verse, a great voice which did not cease. This voice is in the recesses and is not heard or revealed, and when it issues from the throat, it utters the aspirate without sound, and it flows on without ceasing, though it is so tenuous as to be inaudible. From this issues the Torah, which is the voice of Jacob. The audible voice issues from the inaudible. In due course, speech is attached to it, And through the force of that speech, it emerges into the open. The voice of Jacob, which is the Torah, is thus attached to two females, to this inner voice, which is inaudible. Again, the voice of Jacob, which is the Torah, is thus attached to two females, to the inner voice, which is inaudible, and to the outer voice, which is heard. Strictly speaking, there are two which are inaudible and two which are heard. The two which are not heard are first the supernal wisdom, which is located in the thought and is not disclosed or heard. And secondly, the same wisdom when it issues and discloses itself, a little in a whisper, which cannot be heard, being then called the great voice, which is very tenuous and issues in a whisper. The two which are heard are those which issue from this source, the voice of Jacob and the articulation which accompanies it. This great voice, which cannot be heard in a house, to the supernal wisdom, the female is always called house, and the articulation we have mentioned in a house, to the voice of Jacob, which is the Torah, and therefore the Torah commences with the letter Bet, which is, as it were, a house to it. Rabbi Shimon here drew a parallel between the creation of heaven and earth and of woman. In the beginning God created, he said, corresponds to, and the Lord built the side, the heavens, corresponds to, and he brought her to the man, and the earth corresponds to, bone of my bone, since this one, assuredly, is the land of the living. This is incredibly, incredibly powerful. I'm going to take it apart. Last week, if you remember, we talked about the word and we talked about the sound. Here we're going to talk about what is the audible voice and what is the inaudible voice and what begins what and how. The inaudible voice is in the recesses and is not heard or revealed. What does that mean? That means that where the voice actually begins, where it is actually heard internally, where it actually lives, is inside your mind, inside the brain, inside God's space. So inside God's space that it never, never exits that space until it's brought to the intention of the word. In other words, the speaking. He says that the voice is in the recesses and it is not heard or revealed. Why? Because it's in the thought. the thought itself does not reveal. The sound connected to the thought, spoken then, will reveal. And when it issues from the throat, it utters the aspirate without sound. Meaning, if you try to bring that which is not heard into a place where you need to force, what you will get is something, but certainly not the potential of it all. The audible voice issues from the inaudible, of course. Why? Because the inaudible is your thought process. The inaudible is that which I, on the outside, don't hear, but you, on the inside, do hear. When you decide, and that is the key, when you decide that you want that sound, those vowels and those words and that color and that interpretation to be heard, and that's a decision, then the process begins of bringing the inaudible to the audible. And the audible is utterance, speaking. We all speak. We don't think about speaking. Nobody really ever taught us how to speak. From the time we were really little, we learned words by following the sounds that we heard around us. And then the lips began to move, and the tongue began to do, and then came teeth, and then came speech. But nobody ever taught you how to speak. So when I say to my students, the intention of the word, meaning your thought process of speaking, your desire to speak, is the desire which makes the inaudible audible. When you begin speaking and you have intention, what is intention? Intention is, again, something mental. It's not something physical. It's mental. I have the intention that I'm going to sing, which is the same thing as speaking. Sound is sound. And you are the speaker of sounds. The fact that you want to sing those sounds that you hear are in truth desires, decisions that you make, not sounds. You don't know what sounds are. You don't know what words are. Your brain knows what that is. Your thinking knows what that is. That's what we've got. There is no conversation about anything. We have only thinking. When we think, we decide to speak. That brings us to the intention of the word. And once you have the intention of the word, then you have a decision. You have a decision: what color, what word, what sound, how large, how small, pianissimo, grande, forte, whatever you want. But all of that is not made inside the physical instrument. All of that is made in the process of thought. Once you can take the process of thought and bring it to the intention of the word and speak that process, there is no pressure. There is no forcing. The great voice that we're looking for, the great potential of the voice that we're looking for, is located in the thought and is not disclosed or heard. And secondly, the same wisdom, when it is heard, being then called the great voice, which is very tenuous and issues as a whisper. That means, basically, if you don't do anything and you just move your mouth and you just allow the speaking to happen internally, your mouth will move, your thoughts will speak, the air will move your thoughts and sounds and vowels, and all you need to do is allow the speaking to actually take over. The house that Rabbi Shimon talks about, the house, is Hashem's space, the place I call God's space. It's the one space you can't touch. It's the one space you can't manipulate. It's the one space you basically have to trust. The trusting of what you're thinking. The trusting of what then you are speaking comes once you learn how to again maneuver your thoughts inside the right place. Somewhere down the line, I say it, and I say it all the time, that I don't teach voice. Voice is not something that can be taught. It's either there or it's not there, meaning if you can speak, you can sing. It's exactly the same thing. But if you don't speak well, you probably won't sing well, or you can speak very well, but when you come to singing, you're completely in a different mindset, and you begin putting the voice into places that you consider to be singing, or that you were taught what was singing, and that generally 99% of the time is in your mind connected with the throat. So you're taking from here and you're pulling down here and manipulating something that actually already has its place, already has its house, already has its thought process, already has its life force, already has all the air that you could possibly want, already knows how to speak, already has all the music, all the words, everything that you want to speak, all your thoughts, all the colors of what you're looking for to produce for a particular piece, okay? You have absolutely everything right there. All you have to do is you have to become the speaker of sound instead of the creator of sound. Now there's a big difference between the two. The creation of the sound precedes you. That is God's work. When you become the creator of sound, you work inside slavery, limitation, up and down, manipulation, force, muscles. And then you ask me, how come what I actually hear is not what comes out of my mouth? Do you know how many tone-deaf students I've had that came to me and said, I'm told not to even sing in the shower. I am so bad. And all I say to them is, you're not so bad, you're disconnected. Disconnected meaning you are disconnected from the house, you are disconnected from God's space, you're disconnected from the proper thinking, you're disconnected from the magnitude of air, you're disconnected from what is already created and connected to what you think you need to create with. The depth of this work is beyond. Listen again. Therefore, the Torah commences with the letter Bet, which is a B, which is, as it were, a house to it. The voice of Jacob inside the house, the supernal wisdom of the house, and the articulation we mentioned is a house to the voice of Jacob. So without the articulation, meaning without the intention of the word, there is no connection to the thought process. Meaning, the intention of the word pulls the tension of vowel, sound, and air upward and backward. What does that mean? What does that mean? For that, you need to come to the masterclass, because that in the books, of course, is revealed. Here, we want to just talk about the very general principles of Jirvok motion technique and Kabbalah. But one thing becomes very, very clear. We're now on page 161. If you look into my Zohar, every 2 or 3 pages, there is a reference to the voice. There is a reference to the creation, which is the connector of the voice, because with voice, God created the world. With letters, and then with vowels. The combination of letters and vowels, the combination of voice, is exactly the opposite of what you think. You think everything is out and Kabbalah teaches, and I teach, that everything is in. And when you can connect to the internal voice, and you can connect to the internal way of being with the voice, and when you have the rudiments of how to do that, and there is very, very, very simplistic way of connecting this entire process. Babies do it. Newborn babies do it. The first thing they do, they use their voice. We have forgotten. My job is to bring that back. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai did this in a very, very esoteric and deep way. I do it in the way that I know as a very simple human way of connecting. Real muscles, real air, real brain, real movement, real speaking, real tongue, real quiet, real thinking. But all of it is connected to the greatness of the creation of the world and God. You want to be great? Dare to listen internally. See you next week. Bye-bye.